This conversation with Bus did not go according to plan. We were supposed to talk about the Logseq database version, but instead we ended up speaking for a long time about relationships, personal knowledge management, a whole bunch of things. Earlier in the year, I met Bus in person and I was going through a very difficult time, and Bus's insights proved to be helpful. And I decided to include the full video version because I think there might be some things in here which will be helpful for you too. It's a broad-ranging discussion. We chat about relationships, personal knowledge management, of course, and then we do end up chatting about the Logseq database version, but it is only much later in the video. So if you are interested in only that, you can skip ahead using the timestamps. I asked Bus, and you'll see in the video that I spoke about, are there any parts that we want to edit out? And I was inspired by his answer of showing one's full self on the internet so that people can see, who you really are behind the scenes. So with that spirit, I'm including the full interview, and I hope you enjoy it.
So I'm currently making a video that talks about like quality tools and making that decision to go deep for a certain tool, where I talk about both like having quality tools and how they make your work more enjoyable, but also when I get to apps, like to know that you're doing an investment both in time and money when you're picking a tool, so that you shouldn't switch that often.
Yeah.
I hope it's coming together a bit well. I did a video about it before. I'm doing another go at it.
I was kind of impressed. I met this guy. He's been very successful CEO of like a number of companies. He's a mentor of my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is like, you should chat to these guys. And he said something which was surprising. He's like, I keep thinking, people aren't going to want to study Logseq or learn how to use Logseq because it takes too long or whatever. He's like, the time benefit that you get if you invest in one tool and you actually learn that tool properly is so much more. Well, it's multiplied over years. Like the savings, like the idea that like you free up cognitive load, and I really feel like that.
It's definitely true. So like I switched around between Logseq and Obsidian in the beginning, and those are two tools that are on what they do pretty close to each other. And of course, like they both use Markdown background files at the moment, at least. So I could switch between the two if needed. But the amount of time I lost by adjusting my systems, trying to figure it all out, seeing how I can get the most of it, made me more aware. And like in the video I'm recording now, I mentioned that one as well. I often get emails because, if once you get your channel starts hitting like in the thousands, you start getting emails from productivity apps that go like, hey, want to try our app? And a lot of those are really good. Like there's some really nice ones. Like I think Scrintle is one, like, where you like draw and have everything visual. And I look at that and I go like, oh, this looks amazing. But I also know that if I want to do a proper review, if I actually want to talk about like how this tool is day to day, I would have to do a major commitment just to get up to a level that I think I should be talking about it.
Yeah, you don't want to become like a tool reviewer, which is just like a quick overview of this and overview of that. But like, are you actually using that thing day to day and like building your own workflows and stuff?
Yeah, so I much rather have like the setup now where I talk more about the general productivity things, like the thoughts that are about like personal productivity, note taking tasks, like figuring out, what works for you. And then having my core tool set that I use day in, day out, Logseq and Todoist as a base for that. But trying to find that balance where it's broad enough that somebody that isn't using that exact tool set can share those ideas. Because a lot of these things, I think that was one of the things that I mentioned in the whole personal knowledge management is stupid idea. People make it overly complex. It's not as complex as people try to make it. I'm writing some notes on that as well. I'm saying, okay, basically there's two types of information that I have. There's the stuff that's like ongoing, stuff that goes in the journal, which is usually things that you want to collect or things that you want to look back over, like over time. Very often those are meeting notes that you just need to like refer to in the next week while you're going on with your day. And I think nearly all the other things are just notes on a topic where you want to put all the notes into one larger page where you like collect and organize and clean up these notes, because those are for reference. Those are for you to quickly access. I tried looking at the whole atomic notes kind of thing, which is very strong in that regards. And the problem I have with a lot of the atomic notes is that it's awesome if I want to build something because I can take all these snippets and then string them together. But for work, which is my main target, I don't need snippets. What I need is one page that talks about how a database works and has like quick links to all the queries that I need and or where they are located and if there's any requirements that I need to do. And that needs to be like in one, in my case, outline that I can quickly go through. And that's
I
also
think
why I
that's
try to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's what I was about to say. The outline is like that's why the outline is so good. Like instead of like having to have like this mini note and this mini note and this mini note like linked in there, it's like I just collapse that all in the outline and I expand what I want to see and what I don't want to see.
Yeah,
Um,
and for most nodes, I now try to have like a 3-level structure. So the top structure is usually large sections. Maybe it's sometimes 4, but mostly it's like 3. So one is like the main topic. So what am I talking about? Like say for example, I have a database and I have like servers. So like which machines are there? Queries, which talks about the queries. And then I have like the second level, which is usually the topics that are in there, like which specific query or which server. And then the final one, and the third level is usually the details. And once I get into the details, those I usually have folded in because they, when they're folded out, they obscure my overall view. So this way I
mm,
get like a quick outline of what I have in a note. So I get reminded about these are the notes that I already have about this topic. And then if I need the details, because you can't get everything from like one layer, then I shift click on it, open it on the side and read the details. But having that overview, knowing what's out there means that I can fix the gaps that start to exist over time on a certain topic.
mm,
Um, and that also kind of fixes the whole thing. Like when you're trying to search for notes, you don't know what you forgot. You've
yeah.
forgotten. So you can't find what you forget. And for me, rediscovery is very important and work is very important. So what I want is that for a specific type of work or a specific topic that I want to talk about, I want to have one page that I can basically reabsorb as quickly as possible. And for me, the quickest way is to have like a simple outline that talks about the main beats, no details, nothing, just the names,
Mm,
because it's somewhere in there, right? I think like when you, I don't know, you don't play video games, right? So you probably
no.
have it. Um, I'm gonna take it in the game context here because for movies it's easier. Movies, like roughly what the movie was about. But
Yeah.
I've noticed that when I replay old video games, I've been into a habit of replaying games that I played when I was younger. If you asked me up front, like, what was this game about? I wouldn't know anything anymore. I go like, yeah, roughly the hero goes, saving whoever. But as I was playing the game and I got into the level, I knew what was going to happen after every corner. I knew which creatures were going to be there. So all that knowledge was still in my brain. I just couldn't access it. And the moment I
Mm,
start playing that game, my brain just goes like, "Oh yeah, we have that. Let me dust that off and get that for you."
yeah, that's a
And I
cool
think it's the
analogy.
same with notes. We just need that one small hook to reopen that part of our brain that was aware of that in set. So that's the goal of my notes.
Oh, I noticed something. I did a meditation retreat a few years ago, and on the day that I came out, I just did like a data dump of like what was going on for me. And I completely randomly discovered them because I was searching for one person's name, and I'd written
Mhm.
something about that person in that data dump. And I went and I read those notes, and I was like, wow, like this was an interesting frame of mind you were in. Oh, exploring that. Oh, cool. Like there's something about like you've moved beyond that now, and it's like you're not that same person anymore, which
Yeah.
was quite rewarding. But it's interesting what you said in the context of work because I've started working. I feel like we dived in, yeah, and like I didn't want to get into Logseq because like um for the audience, I
Yeah.
mean we met in Amsterdam at the beginning of this
Yeah.
year,
It was great fun.
and yeah, it was so cool. It was like I feel like your second job should become like a relationship counselor because you had like such good advice.
Mm.
Um, and I was
There's a
from
lot
like
of study that went up front of that. Uh,
exactly.
yeah, for sure. I also love talking about it because I've spent so much time on it. That's
But
uh
why don't you don't make videos like that for your YouTube channel though?
no, because I pick productivity because it's a bit more safe.
Yeah.
And like as you might have noticed, I mean, I'm not sure how much time you spend on X or Twitter, but Tiago was like investing some time in polyamory and stuff like that.
Oh no.
not everybody took that as well, which I get because I've seen that transition. Um, but I don't think like a lot of people went too short on that one. Sure, you
Mm.
can agree or disagree with that. I totally get that part. But one of the things that they don't realize is once you dive into that section of relationship, there comes a lot of self education with it. And one of the things that I noticed, and I think Tiago was trying to mention over all the people shouting about it, is it helps you if you have like a loving monogamous relationship as well, because you start doing the work. You start realizing that relationships are work, mostly work on yourself, I think.
Mm.
Um, and then after that relation, like partner, how to treat a partner, but also like how to work together, how to communicate things. In the end, it all boils down to the same thing. Like with notes and with relationship, it's all communication and how to express, yeah, well, your needs, desires, and get to the end point. Communication is hard, and it's also the most interesting thing we have as a species.
Yeah, I feel like you must just shout if you want me to exclude any content from here, because this is all interesting and rich and not going in any other direction than I thought it would. But like, this has been an interesting thing for me recently because I, yeah, I've only lost my temper in 3 occasions in a work context, and all of them were with the same company context. And now someone that I met through that company, I was doing some collaboration with, and just pushed all the buttons and I lost it. Like I saw red.
Yeah,
And like there was a whole bunch of things coming up for me. Like I don't feel safe. I don't feel like I'm being heard. This person is not listening. Da, 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 da. But instead of like being like, whoa, let's like just take this, let's put a foot on the brakes. I was like, F you. Da, da, da. Like, and I said, it's literally happened in 3 meetings and I'm not proud of it. Because
yeah,
like you immediately lose respect and da, 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 da. But I had a good cry about it and I was like, shit, man, I want to be better. And it's okay realizing that I'm not where I want to be, but also
yeah.
knowing that there's like, oh, yeah, and I feel like, yeah, like you've got a very measured, genuine, caring approach, and also like just a general self confidence, like in the way that you come across.
Yeah, but that's also like a lot of therapy that I had. I always tell people like when they ask like, "Okay, why are you well put together?" So this therapy. It's like I
Mm,
got therapy before I needed therapy because I said like it's better to work on yourself beforehand. And I'm
mm,
a big proponent for anybody to take some time and do that self-reflection work when you're still feeling good. Don't wait until you feel bad. Do it now because my experience with therapy, and I had the blessings of a really good therapist, somebody that basically anytime when I went there and we had a chat and I came out, I was always leaving with questions, which is good because you think about yourself and where you want to be and how you
mm,
feel. Um, so being relaxed and self-confident is usually a result of, not being relaxed and self-confident. I made plenty of mistakes. I've seen some bad shit. I've done some bad things I'm not proud of because we're human and we make mistakes.
mm,
And I take like some, I wouldn't say I'll never truly forgive myself for a lot for some things because I just made a mistake. But I can live with myself because I go like I learned and it won't happen again because
mm,
I've grown as a person. I also think that's a big problem that you see with online culture, for example, these days, where it's very hard for people that are in the public view to make a mistake and then recover from that, while
mm,
life is mistakes. And that thing that icks me a bit when I look online and see people getting hammered for making a mistake, and I'm going like, okay, but if you break someone down, how can they learn and become better people? To
mm,
become better people, you need to make mistakes. So yeah,
yeah.
it looks easy, but it was with a lot of hard work. And I keep telling people that it's a lot of hard work because I want other people to not look at it and go like, is that easy? No, that comes with some effort. And after that, and that's one of the reasons why I talk with like a relationship with you as well. I try to find a balance. I don't want to act like I know everything because I don't. The levels like you get at some point, you get like a foot in the door, you start realizing how deep the rabbit hole really goes.
Mm,
But I do want to. help others, like to find like a couple of information, and not so much, I think, to tell them this is the way, but to give them enough of a guidance that they know like the path. The best, if you like on a split point, like a left path and a right path, and I want to send them on the right path that they can find their own way without having to go through the dark forest, basically. I think that's a
Mm.
nice analogy for it. Will that get them to the end result? No, they still need to travel. But at least it will be a more pleasant experience than the other path where,
Yeah,
you have to figure stuff out.
that's interesting
And
because I feel like um I feel like the dark forest is very much like where I've been this year, very much like dark forest territory, and
mhm,
I'm I'm almost trying to reframe it for myself as like this is the fruitful darkness, like this is where the fruit is. So it's like, yeah, I don't wish it on anyone else,
yeah,
but to reframe it as like the stuff, like the unknown and the uncertainty and the just like the depth of like feeling
yeah.
is not productive, but like it's like there's something there. There's like there's a diamond in the rough somewhere, I hope.
I genuinely believe, um, well, I don't, I've seen enough bad people to know that not everybody is a diamond in the rough, but
Mm,
I do believe that most people are a diamond in the rough. I usually
mm,
compare that when I was like driving motorcycle. If I'm driving my motorcycle in the Netherlands, at least you're allowed to drive in between traffic jams, right? You can travel between. Um, I've had a couple of accidents there because somebody wasn't paying attention and basically like put their car in front of me. But I always say like that's three people over years of traveling up and down, and that's thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that made way for me. And that's
mm,
most people. Most people care about each other. They want other people to succeed. And they might have like their own struggles and things that they work with, but deep down to it, they won't bring somebody else down to get themselves up, you know?
mm,
And it's just too bad that a lot of the uh, people that do that, that they get the spotlight because they don't deserve the spotlight. I don't want to give the spotlight to whoever hit me when I was driving the motorcycle. I want to give the spotlight to the really large set of people that just made that little bit of extra space on the road when I was driving there, because those are the most people and those are the people that I started it for. Because when I make something like productivity content, I hope to help others. That's the main goal because,
mm,
I have a job. I earn enough money. I don't have to do sponsorships. I did do sponsorships, but mostly as an experiment to figure out like what does sponsorship mean. It's also the main reason that I deny most requests for it, because if it's not something that I'm personally interested in, I don't want to spend the effort and the
mm,
demands and the writing the scripts and then having to do like a special set for it. So usually when I talk about something, it's going to be keyboards because that's like my personal addiction. Uh, so those people, they have a foot in the door, right? I get an email going like, "Hey, you want to try this new keyboard?" It's like, I really shouldn't, and then I'm halfway through making a video, and I think
you've
most of
got
my viewers know that. Hmm?
got split keyboard as well. I see your split keyboard in the back there.
Ah, nice. Which one do you rock
uh,
currently?
just the Kinesis, the cheapest one.
Yeah,
We don't get like a very wide option in South Africa, so just take what comes basically.
yeah,
Just on the personal development stuff, like something which I've been considering a lot recently is like I used to journal a lot.
yeah.
Still do a little bit, but
Hmm.
I recognize that like there's something about the journaling process that like you can almost there's a good word in meditation which is like reify. Like you make the thought solid and it becomes this thing and it's like yes, like it almost becomes too real. So it's like and you sort of get into the thought loop of this is neurotic thinking of like I have to take every journal or everything down that the therapist said or this or this or this. And it's like everything just becomes like it becomes this onslaught instead of just like being the observer. Like I love this analogy of like being the cusp of the waterfall and
Hmm.
the water flows over. And as your thoughts flow
Yeah,
over, you are just the cusp observing. But if you're trying to capture everything, journaling, da 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 da, da like you touching at water that's moving past. It's impossible. It's an impossible stream. And I
Mhm.
see a lot of like neurotic behavior in note taking. Like I need to make sure I do all of this and do all of that. I don't see that in your videos, so I'm keen to see or hear more about like your perspective on journaling and yeah.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of journaling. I'm currently right now. Actually, I might still here. Oh, there it is. So, in my current video, I'm talking about this. This is a fountain pen that I got to journal because I wanted some skin in the game. So I got a good pen
Mm,
and I did like journaling on paper, which was a deliberate slowdown, right? Because normally I still type these days, but I had a phase where I said like I wanted to do some writing because I wanted to improve my handwriting and to just sit down and enjoy the process. And it was effective. Like I did it for a couple of years. Um, And it's also the place where I'm going like, okay, if I'm journaling, I'm not expecting to reread this, maybe
mm,
on a whim, but I don't expect it to be something that I'm going to search for. I'm not going to go through like the notebooks that I have upstairs for the years that I journaled. It's the process itself, the clearing of the head, and usually from the journaling moment sparks new ideas or like for refining the things that are going through my head because I suddenly have to put them to paper. And I think the whole process of getting that to paper uh, actually works really well when you're writing because the speed of putting it in a system, typing or writing, isn't your limiting factor there. My limiting factor is my brain trying to get all these thoughts together and funnel them through my hands into whatever system I want to put them in. Uh, and because there's a limited amount of output there, you have to uh, filter. You basically filter in your brain. You're going like, okay, what am I gonna journal and write about? I'm not gonna write down my whole day. So what were the highlights? What were the things that
mm.
uh, get my attention? Um, and getting that attention, finding out, whatever is sparking right now. I think that's what journaling tells me. When I'm journaling, I can see what has my attention because I'll be writing down what I want to write. Right? It's my moment. It's my journal. I'm gonna read it if
Mm.
at all. So whatever I'm writing down is probably the thing that I find most interesting and easiest to get started with. Or, and that could be the opposite of it, is the thing that irritates me most so that I should take action on. Because it's
Yeah.
the two ends of the spectrum, right? Either I'm full of something I'm following or I'm full of something that I want to get rid of in my life because it's draining me. Um, it's a
Yeah.
bit of the yin yang during journaling. Uh,
Yeah. And that like I think there's a saying which is like that which is in front of you is your teacher. Like
yes.
whatever was in front of you. But like
And
that also circling like or linking that sort of to the work idea, because you said something which I think is super pertinent, which is like you've got the high level pages that you go back to. You got the I don't know what term you use, but a little bit more detail. And then like the lot of detail is like in the
yeah,
outlines. Um, and I think Andy Matushak says something to the effect of like most people who make productivity content or writing content, whatever, don't actually have a serious use case. So you do have a serious use case, and you
I
looking
have to
back
do this
and
every day. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm actually like really glad to be back. And I don't know if I told you, I'm working part time again.
Yeah.
Um, so this is beyond the other collaboration I spoke about. I'm like working for a company that I used to work with, and I'm doing like a whole project for them. And like there's so much insight into like, okay, cool. This is how I work, and this is how I'm having to work with others, and this is how I'm like now taking notes, and how can I improve this to like make sure that it like all comes back when I need it and whatever. So it's been like a really like nice like refresh. Um, but like taking notes for work and like yeah, most of my stuff is actually still goes here first, paper. Like
Yeah. It's your
I just
first
love it.
filter.
And then I
Yeah.
and then I put stuff in Logseq or well I'll often use Tana as like a transcription, and then I'll copy that into Logseq depending on what the context is. Like some meeting notes, like Tana does auto transcriptions, which pretty impressive. I don't like
Yeah.
taking the action items and stuff. It's just like saying if I go back and I look at the different things, what were the different things? But action items, I like owning the action items, being like, hey, this person must do this, or this is what I need from you, or this is not like letting the AI do it, because it really becomes
No,
concrete.
it's I don't like AI for like actions, or a lot of those, um, because there's goals and limits to it. And providing actions, actually writing down, means understanding what needs to happen. And AI doesn't
Mm.
understand. At least the large language models don't understand that. Um, is that good or bad? I think, like all things, we're in the, I would call the, that when the iPhone came out, everybody suddenly could install apps, and we were all drinking virtual beers by putting the phone to your set. Um, that's the phase AI is in now. Everybody thinks you need to write like 10,000 different type of apps, and you have to apply it everywhere, and people want to try new things. Um, Once that phase is gone, it will boil down to the things that are actually useful. And then, the funny side apps will die down, and people start using it for what it's useful for, and hopefully stop using it for what it can't. Um, and I think, like, I do like it for things like summaries, but I
Mm.
also wrote down. I'm currently prepping a presentation for my department at the current project I'm working at the bank, where I'm explaining that using ChatGPT to summarize something should always be done by the sender and not by the receiver. Because the sender knows if the end result, the summary, a summarized version of it, is
Mm.
actually gold or terrible. They can
Yeah.
look at it and go like, "Hey, if I look at this summary of it, then all the key elements are there." If the person that gets it does that, they don't know. They might miss
Yeah.
crucial information because they don't have that picture. You can't remove information from something you got and then fact check yourself.
Yeah. I I'm using Claude as well. I was trying Claude and ChatGPT just
Mhm.
because, like, I found one of the projects I'm working on is a data analysis project, which is like mapping transactional data into different categories.
Yeah,
And I found like ChatGPT did a terrible job. Just like, like, this is an Airtable subscription. Couldn't recognize that this was Airtable. This was like Integromat, whatever. Couldn't recognize
hmm
it. And I was like, how? And I tried Claude, worked beautifully, and then, like, you know, created a Python file that then went over the full 8,000 line item CSV, and, within
yeah,
half an hour, stuff that I would never have been able to do. So, like, I love it from that perspective. But, like, um, yeah, the generating content for the sake of it, like, I see that's like a lot of people fall into that trap, are going to fall into that trap, where it's just like, oh, I just need to create more content. And it's just like content for the sake of it. Like,
yeah. Oh, that's horrible because I can see it. Like everybody can see it by now.
yeah.
I think it's a testimony to how good we are as a species. That
Mm.
by now, I think I was reading an article last week, was a post internally for the project I'm working at, so I can't explain what was said. But I was reading through it and was going like, "This is a lot of text for this information, and it feels a bit cookie cutter." And then looking at it again and go like, "Yeah, this is fully generated." And as a result, instead of getting a more fine-tuned, optimized piece of text that's quick to read, it actually is just more text. Um, And then I'm going like, okay, whose life are we improving with this? Because I have to
Mm.
spend more time reading it, and this gets sent out to like the whole company. So that's like 10,000 people that get to read this long text. Um, and did it really help the person writing it for a lot? It's
Yeah.
also
Do they
one of
actually
the,
understand? Do they understand what they just did, or did they just,
yeah,
yeah.
in this case, they did because it was mostly a thanks and a project that's successful. But it also comes with like a
Uh,
lot of things that I think are totally cringe. I have the same thing if I try to let AI generate my YouTube scripts. I once like, I usually do like a voice to text and then let it generate an outline, and then I can work from there. But for the fun of it, I think with the new script that I'm writing right now, I said like, just generate the whole script for me. Just give me the whole text. I went like for the first paragraph. It's absolutely horrible. I can't in the life of me imagine someone uh, just taking that verbatim and using it as a script. And and you see that at some of the auto-generated YouTube videos where I'm going like, no, this is like so disrespectful for me as a viewer. And I'm not saying that AI doesn't help, because it helps a lot in my case, because I make the outline, then I clean out the outline, and then I talk to ChatGPT and ask it to reflow my text, the meaning that it's 90% still me, but it just gets the fluff out of it. So that when I'm reading the script, it's clean. But then it's like still a human talking, right? As soon as you get like it's too much involved, it becomes bad. And I also have like a really nice example that I've been working on this week where I do generate a lot of stuff and then it actually adds. And I have it standing here.
Yeah.
So this is like a booklet that says Aaron and the Room That Shall Not Be Mentioned, D&D adventure led by Derek. I'm in a D&D adventure. And one of the things that I started doing, and we can see like in this part, there's like a whole session explanation on what we did.
Yeah.
What I do now is I have my books device, and during the session, I just write notes. So I don't think about the notes, I just write some rough notes on what's happening. And then once the session ends, which is usually 2 or 3 hours, that session is like still fresh in my brain and everything. So then I go to ChatGPT and I voice the text and I go over my own notes. So I just say like, okay, so this is the adventure that we had. This is what happened. This is who talked to who and blah, blah, blah. Getting into like a paragraph or two. And then I have like made a special prompt that turns that into a book. So this overview is like one thing, but then it basically starts writing a fantasy novel of our D&D adventures. And here I don't mind that it generates like a little bit of extra text, because it's the fluff here that makes it easy to read compared to my bullet point notes, which were like very factual. And the fact that it's generated, I did put in the prompt, you're a fantasy writer, so it's probably stealing some stuff from Tolkien. But overall, because the end goal is like a really subset of people that had this adventure, so their theater of the mind is there. And in combination with that, they know what happened, and it helps my team members that couldn't make a session because they can now read a story. So one of the things that I have 2 sessions, and I've only started doing this for like I think the last 2 games that I really started using ChatGPT to generate this. But I have one with my old friend group, and we're all dads. So we call ourselves all dad and dads instead of D&D. And sometimes there's 2 months in between the session because life gets in the way. You have kids, not everybody can make it. So now I generate this, and everybody, while they're in the car driving to the game master, we listen by having text audio again. And so that by the time that the session starts, we all remember what we did 2 months ago when we had a session.
Sure.
And by having added a little bit of fluff added to my notes, because normally it was really factual, now it's something they can listen to on the way instead of like if it was reading a bullet point, you have to think too much, basically.
Yeah. And it's actually enjoyable to do that.
Yeah.
So I wanted the premise of our conversation was going to be chatting about the Logseq database version.
Yeah, we're definitely need to get to that one as well.
That was where we started. Where we're going to start. But yeah, I mean, you've been keeping close tabs, I think, on database version. I have had to answer a few questions from people to be like, what are the updates and what is this and what is that? And I'm very grateful for your videos because you did a good job of breaking it down. But it's taken some time.
It's taking way too long.
Which I'm quite grateful for, because then I don't have to make any updates to course content or stuff. At some point, I'm going to have to make updates. Yeah, I know there's going to be questions like, well, what's going to change? What are the updates? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I don't think it's going to be that much, but yeah, keen to get your take on. Okay, well, say it's taking very long, and in your video that you did, you spoke about how they actually they built their own database.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's like they have an SQL database and it has a very simple structure, right? It's just like an ID number and the text, and then the text internally refers to other ideas. I was a bit disappointed when I was looking at that because I was hoping on something that I could query a bit more, and this seems to be more a backend to their system. But as I gave that a little bit more thought, it was like, okay, but at least this is pretty fast, because what they can do now is they can get a block, and if that block refers to another block, they can instantly get that from the database because they get that ID number. So what you can see is that they're rewriting the whole premise on which Logseq was built. Take into account that when Logseq originally was built, it was built as a org mode, but graphical web interface. So org mode was like a way of Logseq working, but then an Emacs on text, and it was very technical. Now, I wouldn't say that Logseq isn't technical, because I still think it draws the engineers out a lot, because it's not as user friendly as I would love to see it. But I get it's built by engineers for engineers a bit right now. And I'm not knocking on Jakob, who's doing like his best. He's doing the UX stuff, and he's doing a lot of work to get that up to like a better level. Definitely when I'm talking about feel. So that's a huge change. And because of the legacy code that they have like a lot of features and possibilities. They had to rewrite a lot of the system. Nice example that you can see there, for example, is that Logseq has this task system. So you press Control Enter, and then it starts a line with to do or waiting or done. And then that's how you do task management. In a database system, that's totally different, because what they did is they built like a core foundation on how structures are built. And then they, on that core foundation, they rebuilt the task system, meaning that instead of the task now being like, oh, any line that starts with to do, it's now any line that has like hashtag tasks in it, or task, I think, not tasks. I haven't double checked last day. So that's like totally different. And you see a lot of people going like, yeah, but that's not what I was used to. And I get that, because I want to, but then again, like if it still works the same, if the app still has like I press Control Enter and it adds the hashtag task and it adds like a property that says it's to do, do I care from a day-to-day standpoint? What I care about when I look at that is mostly like, hey, if you're building that solid foundation, that means that if they upgrade their foundation, they upgrade it everywhere in Logseq. So that's a complex rewrite that they're doing. But that's definitely one in the category big project, and very scary. I've seen a lot of these. We'll have to rewrite everything. Fail. That's part of life when you do it on that scale. So this is also why it's taking very long, because the whole team's now working on it, because you don't see like any updates. I haven't seen a change log in the last 2 months, for example. So they're really down on crunch time getting this done. There's not much happening in any other brands except database branch. And I know that they're just crunch timing it now. They're basically trying to get that alpha out, the first test version for their, their inner core of people that they trust that they can give the alpha version to, and that they won't shoot themselves in the foot, basically. Because when you get like an alpha build, yes, when I get access to that alpha build, I will migrate all my data into that to test, but I won't trust it straight away, because I know I'm in an alpha build. One of the things that you see very often happening is that if you make it like a general beta initially, that people look at it and go like, oh, this looks pretty stable. And then they start depending on it as if it was stable. Eventually, something isn't stable, they lose data, and then they're really mad about it, which, yeah, I don't want to say that, it's too bad, it's your fault, because that's not how real life works. Not everybody looks at it in the same way or from a technical perspective as I do. As an end user, they don't know the difference between, oh, this is duct taped together and it's not ready for prime time yet, and this is good because the front end looks the same. So I'm not blaming them. But I do get that they're trying to keep people away from that. Of course, after the alpha, after the first test, when all the big issues are out and it's like 99% stable, then you'll get a beta, and then you can take those risks. And even then, I do hope that they'll make like frequent backups, so that if something goes wrong, people can just go back to the work they had like a half hour before or something.
Yeah, I see this is going to be a huge problem with, especially like in the community where people aren't like, it's not a paid for product, it's like open source product. And yet people still expect the same level of support or like responsiveness on that. And I don't know, like that feels unfair to me. Like if you're using Tano or Notion and something breaks, yeah, by all means, give them a hard time. But you're using a non-paid paid for open source product? Like, how do you feel about that?
No, they deserve a hard time. They do. It's let's first, Logseq got some VC money. That's a lot of cash that went in their direction. And I want Logseq to grow. I care about Logseq. I use it every day. I think the stability is good. So getting told when things aren't working is cruel. But as said, I much rather have people say like, "Hey, this isn't good enough," than people stop talking. Because when they stop talking, that's
Mm,
when the project is dying. And I
interesting.
am confident, and that's also one of the things that I've noticed. Because of course, uh, like you've talked to Ramses as well, like on the community front end. Their current goal is to get that base, that the back end of Logseq stable, so that if something goes wrong, the worst thing that goes wrong is that the front end breaks or something, but then your data is still safe. Because
Mm,
that's the main thing, right? If the front end breaks, if it, for some reason everything's garbled and you press Control R and reload the whole thing and it's fine and your data is still there, people will complain about it not being stable, but they won't complain about data loss. Data loss is the uh, actual problem. And that's why I think that if there's data loss, people get full right to complain about it because you're putting your sensitive data in there. These days, it's just text. For me, making a backup of my complete Logseq notes, and I have a lot of notes in there, is still a zip process of 30 seconds.
mm,
So nothing is stopping a program from like keeping versions for like the last month so that if something breaks, that at least they can restore the data that's there.
yeah.
Logseq does that. They have like a directory for it. It's hard to access. That's my main beef there. But it should just be easy to say like, hey, for some reason, everything's like broken. Let me go back to yesterday. Let me try it again. Because then people at least like lose a limited amount of data. And
Mm,
to me, ideally, you would never lose data. And I don't care that it's free. I've been in the open source community for a long while now. And it's never good. Like it's the data side, losing data should never happen. That's the one thing. And then for the rest, there's a lot of experimenting and trying, but let's not beat around the bush. This software, this open source software, is usually written by a lot of professionals, people that do this for a living. We
mm,
get paid well. If I'm writing stuff in my free time, if I'm managing a server in my free time, I don't do half work there. If I said, I think I once said like, I have a free volunteer job that I do for a Japanese culture event in the Netherlands, and their servers are on fleek, as in that's taken care of. It's done professionally because if I
mm,
set up a server, there is code to roll that server. If that machine breaks tomorrow, I can spin a new one in like half an hour. There's no money for having like backups of that machine. Well, we have backups as in the data, but we don't have a second machine running because we don't
mm,
expect 100% uptime. So that's where I'm saving the money. And that's maybe a bit like with Logseq that I see where I'm going like, okay, they don't have uh, the capabilities to have like a high available sync solution. That's one of the reasons why the current sync works through like an S3 bucket, and they make choices. Like the choices that they did are full privacy, meaning that if I put a note into Logseq, it gets encrypted, and that encrypted file gets sent to like an S3 storage. It's like an online storage set from Amazon. For people that don't know S3, think of Google Drive, but then a bit more technical. But because of that, there is no smart code. So like if I make a change in Notion, then the only thing that the app does is it sends that change, that one letter change that it did to Notion, and Notion just looks at their database and says like, change this. And if I do the same thing with Logseq, then it just takes the whole file, encrypts that, and just puts it next to the rest of the encrypted files. But all the work is done by your application locally, making it a lot slower. This is also one of the reasons why the database is a good idea. One thing that I was discussing online with other people, though, is that I don't like the fact that the files locally are unencrypted. So, if you get access to my desktop, you can very easily make a full copy of my Logseq notes.
mm,
You just go to my notes directory, you zip all the text files, and you have full access to it. Um, that I don't like. Like that's one of the things that I would love to see changed. Because if you're doing this whole privacy thing, this whole encryption thing, then data at rest is like something like that should be your default. Kind of hoping that with the SQL server that they're using now, that one has the benefit of being part of the browser. So the browser has all these safety guards in place. Like the browser can say like, okay, if you're using this browser, then the database itself will be encrypted at rest. So you can't just copy it. You have to open the browser, log into the app and get to that. I'm not
But
sure
that
if they did.
database is still going to be feeding back to Markdown files in your computer.
Yeah, that's if you want to use the Markdown sync. That's one of the things that they plan, but it's going to be after the database is stable.
Uh,
And that's going to be like,
I thought that was a key component, was like getting that matching from the database to your text files. I thought
yeah,
they had to get right before they release
no,
the
that's not
database
because
version.
you have like the immigration, the migration. So like to import the data. There's a couple of phases here. Like the first one is getting your Markdown files imported into the database. And then the database, the new structure that they're building, from what I've been told, they're going to maintain both. So you can stay on the Markdown files or you can go to the database one. Personally, I think they shouldn't. They should just go full on database as the golden source. Just pick one. Because people go like, oh, that's a bit. Yeah, but if you know what the source is, then it's fine. Like, because they're already doing it. Obsidian does it as well. It reads all the files, puts it in like a memory database, and that's what Logseq does now as well. It reads all the files, puts it in memory and database. Personally, I would say like, pick one and say like, okay, we'll keep it all in the database. We keep the data there and we use that as the single point of truth. For me, that would be most ideal because that means that anything that I do inside Logseq, that's the truth. And everything that happens outside Logseq is nice to have. So if I change like a Markdown file, and it doesn't know what to do, I prefer that it gives preference to my manually typed notes and not to the stuff that I automated by updating a Markdown file.
That's interesting because I like being able to go to the VS Code stuff and reference things there, and make bulk changes. That's where I make bulk changes in Logseq. So if they provide functionality to do like bulk replace all or cleaning up
One
data.
of the things I'm looking forward to is currently Logseq tries to do all this syncing in the background, and it tries to estimate which part is important, which one isn't. And that's, to me, very annoying because if I, for example, have two Logseq screens open, it will go like, hey, I see that this file is changed, and then the other one, and they start messing with each other, which means that like the back-end sync isn't working very well. But if it becomes like a manual sync thing, that means that I can go to VS Code, I can make bulk changes, I can change all the Markdown files at the same time, then go to Logseq and say like, hey, I just made bulk changes. What are you going to do? And then it then tells me like, okay, I see these bulk changes. Do you want me to import that? And then click yes. Having a manual process, just a button that you would have to push or something that would only run every minute, there's something in the background, makes it a slower process, but it also means because it's a slower process that they can do much more safety checks. They can ask more from the user because now I don't want Logseq to inform me when it's saving stuff to files. I want to type and I want it to be saved.
Yeah.
But if it becomes like a two-way sync, then I would prefer if there was like a spinner on the top that says like, hey, I'm syncing the Markdown files in the background. Because then if something doesn't match up, so for example, the Markdown file is changed and the database file is changed, it can make that icon red. And then when I have time, I can click on it and say like, okay, what happened? And it says like, well, I got this change locally and I got this change in the database. What do you want to do? You want to keep the local one? You want to keep the database one? And then fix it for you. But you have like much more control. And that's what happens now, right? You lose data because Logseq does an estimated guess on what is important, but it has no idea what's important because you as a human know what's important, but a machine doesn't know from the two data sets which is there. And another place where it falls flat there is because in a text file, you don't know which line is new and which one's old. So you just know the timestamp from the file. You could, but then we get into a whole other discussion about cluttering up your Markdown files. So if the Markdown file is a bit clean, then the only timestamp you have is when was the file last changed. And the database doesn't have that. Every single sentence will have like a timestamp. So you can sync on sentences, each block, and know like, hey, on this page, these 2 lines were changed. So if I look at the Markdown file, all I need to do is add these 2 lines, which is a much easier sync process.
But I guess this is why they're doing this, because of the real-time collaboration. But then the fact that they want to keep everything still Markdown compatible, which I'm grateful for, it just feels like that's the burden.
That makes it hard.
The other thing that like you spoke about, which I felt like I was like, is like the hashtag tasks, because this is clearly coming from Tana. The structure of super tags or whatever, and like I have this class that has pre-built properties or something like that. And that was something you said in your video, that the part of the new database is the improved accessibility of these class structures. So for instance, like I have articles and I have an input property, or you could call it a type property, like type articles. So essentially that now converts everything to hashtag articles. Now, how would that impact extensibility into like Obsidian? It just feels like it's going to make things so much more complex, because now I'm imagining that the tasks, that your Markdown is going to have hashtag tasks, which is going to confuse Obsidian to no end. And any reader who's coming from a platform where hashtag and square brackets backlinks have the same functionality, I guess that's going to be the biggest updates in the course, is like, don't use hashtags for this sort of thing. It's going to be a nightmare.
Partially it's going to be a nightmare. Another thing is that if you do make this like a separate sync, you can start taking things into account. So one of the things that I would like, for example, is if I know that the database is like a golden source in Logseq, and I have a sync to Markdown script, that sync part could also be done by another plugin. So people could write like a plugin and say like, hey, this plugin does the sync as well. So it takes the database, but in the backend, like when I'm writing the Markdown files, it will specifically write Markdown files that are meant for Obsidian. So it could do that type of conversion where it could go like, hey, maybe even get block links working. There's of course like an ideal scenario, and you would need someone that has the time, the will, and the knowledge to program that. But there's a lot of people that use both. So it would be nice if they make that Markdown sync and add options to it, like an option that says like convert links from what we have now, where there's like a large UUID to link to blocks, to the caret style linking that Obsidian does. Because I don't care when I'm exporting this stuff. I don't need it to have that specific, because that's all in the database. I just want it to be writing Markdown files with the essentials, basically, because my single source of truth is in the database. That's where I'm getting stuff from. And if I get updates, then of course lines and blocks get updated. But in the end, the thing that I don't want to lose is that database, because that has all the extra information, that has all the fluff. And then the Markdown could be kept way cleaner. And that's kind of what I'm hoping that they go for. Not try to write it. I would prefer, if they do want to save that data, to have like 2 syncs, right? One that says, hey, syncing to Markdown, taking its limitations into account. So making it documentation, making it text. And for example, have like another sync that writes it to EDN files, which is the internal format for, but YAML would be nice, JSON would be nice. So it would be nice if that 2-way sync would become back-end agnostic, basically, so that I could pick, hey, I want a text version of my notes. Give me YAML, for example, because then I can have all the detail in there, but I can also process it with a default library in every language under the sun, meaning that I don't have anything difficult.
I guess that was one of my frustrations as well, because like Obsidian released their properties sort of in response to, maybe not response, I don't know the context, but they had this YAML property layer, which is what Logseq started with for the page properties. And now when you change something in Obsidian, it's not compatible with Logseq. It changes things.
No, because they use a different way. Because YAML, Obsidian uses the standard, that is front batter, which is better, right? It's the one that you're supposed to be using. And Logseq uses their property setup with the double colon.
Yeah. Although it
I
still works
like
if you
the
use YAML.
cleanness. Yeah,
Like
it can
that's
still
not
read the YAML
transferable.
font matter.
Yeah.
No. And you can, because I have like, I sometimes, I was hitting one today was because I was cleaning up old pages. I still have pages that have them properties. And then if I dive into it, I find out that those are Obsidian styled properties. And as said, that's one of the things that I kind of hope by letting go of the Markdown. If they would go full database, they could build a sink and say like, hey, what's the goal of the sink? And if the goal of the sink is to be compatible, then instead of trying to cram all the extra properties and styles and functionality in there that they're currently trying to put in Markdown, and just, let go of that and say like, no, what we want is compatibility and standardization. And then say like, okay, if I'm exporting it, then I should use YAML front matter. If I'm putting things in it, then maybe you should use the same caret style as Obsidian so that the compatibility is there. Of course, that would require that the person that writes that sync code builds that functionality. On the other hand, if that becomes like a separate piece of code, it becomes a lot easier for a developer to look at that and go like, hey, I want to implement a patch that gives like an extra functionality that says like, use the caret links from Obsidian instead of the UUIDs from Logseq, because you can just replace that single piece of code and don't have to try and replace it everywhere in Logseq, which you have to do now. So by having the new backend, they might be able to fix that. Of course, it's still a matter of time, and if anybody's willing to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that someone watches this video and, I don't know, takes on board this in a serious way. I don't know. Maybe this is being a bit like delusions of grandiosity, where I'm like, bus. Someone should listen, because it sounds like you're very pro the database version. I wasn't so pro until we've been having this conversation. It sounds like it's the best option, really. But then, or prioritizing the database version, and then making sure that the export is, so deprioritizing text, only deprioritizing in the sense that like Logseq doesn't need to be able to read it from that. There's like that transformation layer or something.
Yeah. It doesn't have to do the transformation, but the two-way sync is still there. And I'm not sure how they're doing it in the backend. Ideally, when you make a change to a file, Logseq should be writing it out. It should have like a background process that checks these files and reads them as they are changed, so that if you get like a change on one of the files, that Logseq goes like, hey, I need to import this. But on my side as well, it's like, okay, why do I want the Markdown files? I'm not browsing my Markdown files on a daily basis, right? I'm working in Logseq. But I do like to have that available, because I like it available because I want to have access to my files if Logseq for some reason, I don't know, becomes like closed source. It's wiped from all internet systems. I can't get the old version anymore. I doubt that will happen, but it's still nice to have it in text format. Like if somebody finds my notes 200 years in the future, and when Logseq isn't available, they can still open it with Notepad, which would be nice. I think a nice example of that is for my books device. If I make handwritten notes in there, I have there's a feature flag on that allows you to save those notes to your own storage. So if I close a note on the books, it generates a PDF of that note, like all the handwritten notes, and uploads them to a WebDAV storage. Like my personal, I have like a storage at stack because I don't host my own WebDAV, but I could host my own WebDAV if I wanted to. The fact that if I make a note and the moment that I close that note, there's a PDF somewhere that I can just open, means that that device can break tomorrow and I can lose my access to books online, which I don't use right now, and I can still access my note. That's the main reason I want an open format to read it. And PDF isn't really open, but it's open enough, right? I have multiple options to read it from. And that's the same thing that I want for Logseq. Like, I don't care about the database. I care about the fact, like, okay, how can I access my notes that are in that database? If I can't access those notes, if there's no export to get it out of the database, that's for me is a problem. Because one of the reasons I like Logseq is, one, I like the fact that my data is local and in my control. And two, I am not dependent on Logseq to read whatever is in that data. And currently, that's there. And Jensen also mentioned that that's going to be a priority. So how they solve that sync is still a question on my end. I do not expect that sync to be there when we get into beta. So we'll get the alpha. It's definitely not going to be there because they're first going to focus on having that golden source working well. Then the beta is going to hit, and I'm guessing it's not going to be there either because it's the second priority, right? Get the database done first, and then start building that two-way sync, because that's another tough nut to crack. You don't want to be spending time working on how you're going to store all your data from now forever in the future and make that flexible enough and work on the two-way Markdown sync. I do expect that two-way Markdown sync to be there before it goes gold, basically. So before the beta is done, I said, like, now it's officially there, then it has to be there. You can't bring this and say, like, now it's at production. So when Logseq goes 1.0, I expect database to be there, and I expect it to be able to keep in sync with local Markdown files so that you are in control of your data. Because the way the SQL is set up right now, it's not readable by humans. It technically is readable by humans.
When Logseq goes 1.0. I like how you say that. It's this whole time. That's not too long.
That's a lot of a thing that a lot of people forget as well. For example, people say, like, yeah, but I'm paying for the sync servers. And it's like, you're not paying for the sync servers. You're donating money, and that way allows you to be part of the beta that does the sync servers. Now, I could rant about that not being a good user experience, right? I mean, you pay money. A lot of people pay the money because they want the sync service. The sync service isn't prime time as I would consider it. So yeah, you get a lot of complaints there. But the sync service is, of course, one of the ways that they want to make money. But to have that, you need to have it in such a way, just like Obsidian, that within the app, you can really easily buy a subscription for the sync service and buy a subscription for the publish service, which is one of the things I think is brilliant in Obsidian, right? I don't need a sync service. I can just sync the files over, right? So yeah, I don't care about that too much. But if I want it, I can pay for it, and then it works wonderfully. Immediately it does. Like, I've used the Obsidian sync. And that's one of the things that I really hope that once the database version is there and they have like a solid backend to work from, that they can implement those things and make it work the way it's supposed to work. But I do need to have access to my files. Like, if Logseq goes to a point where I'm going, like, I can only get it from the database and I can't access my data from the database. And so my nodes are locked in this Logseq SQL format that I can read, but really rough. A lot of people, me including, have a hard choice to make, because are we sticking with something if I can't access that data? So if that two-way Markdown sync isn't there, I don't want to say straight out of the bat that I would have to leave Logseq at that point in time for something else, but I would be starting to eye other tools for sure. Because I want that openness. I want the access to the source code, which is one of the reasons why I am part of the Logseq community, not Obsidian. Because Obsidian is open and they said a lot of positive things. And yes, you can see some of the source code because you can, run the inspector and see the web interface. But it's not the same as having an open source license, which basically mandate that if you go into a direction that I don't like, if Logseq goes in a direction that we don't like, a lot of people complaining about Logseq doing the database thing. Nothing is stopping you from forking it today and building a Logseq that's just as Markdown. That is like, there's no legal thing that stops you, because the Logseq has one of the most open licenses that are out there.
Few people actually do that though, because like the effort that would be required to do that. Like, I mean, I'm sure I could go back and look and for like examples in open source history.
Yes, the most known one is, of course, OpenOffice, that turned into LibreOffice.
LibreOffice, yeah.
Because the was it Sun from the Java set, they went into a bad direction, and the community as a whole moved over to like a different solution. So it can happen, but then you have to be like a larger program, basically, because where do you find people to? I have also made comments about it, saying that it would have been easier for Logseq to find developers if it was written in a more common language. Clojure is niche. It's good. It's of course it's not like a small language by name, but compared to, say, Python, that's not even that's apples to oranges, right? The amount of people that know Python compared to knowing Clojure, and that kind of stops it from being easily forkable. because you have to know Clojure. And I spent some time trying to figure out Clojure, mostly for the query part. I know quite a few programming language. A lot of the old school ones though, because I didn't need like the one that I use on a frequent basis still is Bash, which is, as a Linux admin, obvious. And I got a lot of old school tools like Perl and PHP, a little bit of C, a lot of Pascal. So those are really old languages by now. But if you know those, it's pretty easy to get like into newer languages. If I want to do Python, I'm not confused when I'm reading the code. But then when I read the Clojure code from Logseq, my brain just goes like this. So I don't get how it fits into together because it's a totally different style of writing.
Apparently, Rust is also quite different, I've heard.
Yeah,
C++
but
or...
Rust I could still deal with a bit. I wrote in just a small hello world, so that doesn't really get into the depths of it. It's the same thing with the Clojure one. But for Rust, at least, the goal there is to be like super efficient. Technically, if I look at an operational driven version as like Clojure, then they could do the same thing because everything's an operation, right? Everything's a function in the Clojure language. But to really understand what's happening there, I would have to lock myself up in a room for a month with O'Reilly's Clojure for beginners, and then basically come out going like I've written my own Logseq, to get myself.
Nobody got time for that. Give me just open my curtain.
Unfortunately, no.
Make sure that we've gone over time, so I want to respect your time. Happy to continue conversation. Well, I just want to say I'm super grateful for the conversation. It's like so good to tap into a technical brain that like knows the ins and outs of Logseq like better than I'd say 99% of the population or 99% of the community.
Nobody wants to spend that much time diving into it. Like I run a channel, and of course I need to dive into it. I am blessed with people like at Nico who keep tabs on the community, so that like if I miss because I'm busy working, you have the day job, and I'm trying to figure all this stuff out, and I'm making a video, that then I see like a post come by and like, oh, this new thing happened in the database, and then I dive into that code branch and I start digging into it.
Shout out to Ed. I don't know how Ed keeps on track of all of these different things.
I have no idea how he does it. It's amazing. So I can't give that man enough shout outs because he's been keeping track of all these different platforms at the same time. And this is the easiest way for me to stay in the loop, not in depth, but like high level. And that's enough. Yeah. The other thing, of course, I check the Logseq commit once in a while. So I go like through the changes there. And I'm of course like inside in the loop because I'm on the Discord and the Discuss, and I once in a while I just go see what kind of questions, what are people struggling with, but also what's happening. And you can expect me to make videos as soon as I can when the database version actually starts going.
So I'm seeing here, I've got your email address displayed in the Zoom thing, and I'm wondering, I should probably edit that out unless you want like people emailing you, or like how, like are you still doing? Because I know you did a workshop for enterprise, or like have you got any offerings that
I tried to workshop, but people can email me. That's like not a big issue. It's
so you're happy with that email being there? I won't edit it out.
You don't have to edit it out. Like if people send me an email, they can send me an email. I much rather receive emails with questions, thoughts, and feelings from the people that watch my videos than all the requests if I can try some new app that people have been developing. Because when those things come up, I can't really bring much to the table, right? The only thing I bring is like a viewership that doesn't really care about that app because they watch me because of my Logseq content. But when I get like genuine questions or things from people, it's also one of the things that I might as well shout it out here as well. I have like a 30-minute call set up, link, CCal kind of thing. And that one's free. A lot of people think that it's like, oh, it's to sell me like some big course right after and stuff like that. That's not true. The reason why it's there is because sometimes it's easier just to chat with me for half an hour. I'm a small channel. I actually have time to chat with people for half an hour right now. And I love talking to people because then I hear actual problems, actual things that people deal with in the field. And that helps me make better videos. So I don't have a large plan yet. I tried at some point. It's a lot of work, and I have a day job, so I don't have time to turn that into a business. I don't want to
Mm.
turn it into a business until I have to. Maybe when AI takes over my job as an Azure DevOps developer, doubt it. But if that happens, then I might just live smaller and then use all
Yeah.
the gear that I got to keep making content.
That is a very interesting point because I feel like that is incredibly generous, and I don't offer that same generosity because I'm very protective of my time. Actually, like I'm just like, oh, and there's
I
a lot of
am
things that I've
productive
been.
at the time as well. I've got like one or two of those slots per week. So it's in total, it's like an
Okay.
hour per week. So the only limit there is that if you can't find a slot for the current week, you'll just have to book like a couple of weeks ahead.
Okay.
But I limited that to 2 slots because if I spend more time than, it's more time than I can spend. As you and as everybody watching this, we're all human. We have been allotted the same 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it is limited in the form that there's like a limited amount of slots. But a lot of people, and I think I've had that a couple of times, that people are surprised that they get to talk to me
Mm.
uh, because they go like, "I didn't think you would have like the time to actually talk." And it's like, yes, I run a YouTube channel, but I'm also just a regular dude that runs a job and just makes a few videos on the side.
Yeah. Yeah. You high, but you also high capacity, and like you. I think I'm probably more highly strung than you are, and like just like, and like you just like, oh, I'll take this in my stride, and very helpful. I mean, like when I met you, that came across immediately. Like the person that you see on YouTube is very genuine. And so yeah,
I think
that's
that's
really
that's
awesome.
the only valuable thing you can be on YouTube, because if you're not
Mm.
yourself and genuine, when I'm watching YouTube, I care most about seeing people that are actually like talking about what they like. And I think it becomes even more prevalent now that more and more stuff gets generated, and the disingenuous part of that, where people just try to be like, uh, yeah, it doesn't spark joy, and the algorithm seems to agree because I keep getting smaller and smaller channels these days.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you have that as well, but I keep getting like 1,000, 2,000 subscriber channels because I love to see people that are just talking about what they like and they're spending effort on it. It feels a bit more like the old internet when you were just like in these small communities.
I feel like I should show you my YouTube because I've blocked all recommendations. I just like block everything, and I only go into you because like YouTube, like when I started, it was like that was my source of information. I was like just lapping
Yeah,
everything up, and now I'm just like I said, no, close that tap. There's too much.
yeah,
There's just, and
it
so I
is.
block all the recommendations, all the side feed, and I only go and search in my subscriptions. So I see Bas has like a little red dot next to him. Oh, I go and I look there. Or yeah,
I think
Tiago.
it's
I was following Tiago. It's interesting because like I didn't like his stuff in the beginning, but I've sort of come around to it. Like I think he does a good job of balancing like a lot of content and like valuable stuff. Yeah.
Thiago that did like a lot of work, and I hope to meet him one day. I'm pretty sure if I would like reach out in my network, I would be able to say hi. But the problem he, of course, has um, is that if I go to like an event where he's attending, he'll get swamped by people, right? It's like
Mm,
you have to like swim upstream to spend some time. But I would definitely like to pick his brain on like when he was poking around in the whole poly thing, because I'm not sure
mm.
if it's like a pro strat thing that he did because it got a lot of engagement. So like, did he like play like a 40 chess move there by talking about it because it gets engagement, which I would like totally respect as a content creator. Was it generally interest, which I think is probably the main reason. It doesn't mean that he has to dive into it, because he was mentioning that he was mostly spending time as an interesting topic. Doesn't mean that he did like that he went full hog and tried dating multiple people. What it meant was like,
Mm,
hey, these people actually have a lot of information and that might be useful for everyone.
yeah.
And not everybody received it that way. But that's something I would love to pick his brain about without like 1,500 ex people saying that he's weird.
Yeah. Interesting on that point though. Someone we're talking about this the other day. There's a very good philosophize this podcast. I think I actually mentioned it when I met you, which is like the ethics of infidelity. And the
Oh,
idea that
yeah.
if you really love someone, to own the fact that it might not be that you might not be the best person for that other person, that you might
Mhm.
be, you know, I don't know. And I mean, I don't want to. I'm not. I don't know even want to engage in this in the comments because like I don't have a position or whatever. I just know that like I can only handle one heartbreak at a time. Even that was too much.
Good. Like I've had my fair share of heartbreaks in my life, and it's rough. And the idea of having to deal with like multiple at the same time, I think people wouldn't get out of it. That's a hard risk, but I think any type of love is risk.
Mm,
Uh, I sometimes lose the uh, uh, when it comes to love, like you get like shot through the heart is what some's mentioned. But I'm always going like love is. It feels a bit like there's like this spare in your heart, and you know it's going to come out at some point, either by the relationship not working out, but also we are unfortunately doomed at some point in time to leave our mortal coil. So you know it has to come out at some point, and you still accept it anyway. So it's a thing when the people that I love most, where I'm always going like, okay, I am in this halfway state of pure bliss, and I have to find enjoy that as much as possible because it will never be there forever. Um, and I also had one partner where there was like this comment where sometimes you meet someone and you find out you're not the destination but the journey, like you're
mm,
part of their journey, and letting them go is so hard, um, but it's also very much necessary. And getting through that acceptance thing, I'm misting up almost because I'm looking back at some painful moments in my life, and they helped me grow as a person, uh, but that doesn't make them hurt any less.
yeah. Feel like it's only when your heart is broken that your heart can open. That's one of the things
Yeah,
that I think I've realized this year. That yeah, and let love flow through you as opposed to hold on to it like attachment. Like I realized like there's a big difference between
yeah,
like love and attachment. Like ignoring attachment styles or whatever, but like actually like I need this person. This person is lovely. I'm going to possess this person because they're going to add meaning to my life instead of being like, you're a lovely person. I'm a lovely person. We continue walking in parallel. Maybe we connect. Maybe we don't. I don't know.
yeah.
Anyways, philosophy musings on the end of the Logseq database discussion, which went many different directions. At
It's
different
pretty
points, I was like,
cool.
I hope this is recording. I was like, this is good stuff. I'll check. So yeah.
We'll figure that part out. Oh, another news. I started doing yoga.
Oh, serious?
Finally, it got to that point where I said, like, okay, I could use some flexibility in my life.
And have you
So
noticed any
uh,
difference or
I
improved
already
headspace?
noticed difference. My Tai Chi is helping a lot. I've been going together with my girlfriend. We found like a spot at walking distance, so that's nice. I can just walk there and then have the session and then walk home. Um, and it's super relaxing. And that's what I said. Like with my Tai Chi, I'm like a little bit more flexible.
Mm.
Um, but that still means that there's like poses where I'm going like, hold it like this, but I
What
feel so
style
much
of
better the
yoga?
day after. Pranga, I believe it's called.
One thing that I started is conscious dancing.
Oh, sounds interesting
Yeah.
as well.
It's like ecstatic dancing, whatever. So it's like you go to this big hall and there's a DJ playing and you just like move around and like it's very cool. I'm actually going tonight. That's like where I'm going afterwards. I was going to do something
Nice.
else, but that fell through. So going tonight, gonna go shake everything loose. It's been I think like for me getting out of my head and being like very embodied and like recognizing the judgment layer, like the
Yeah,
continual judgment of others and self and whatever. I mean, like, okay, I see it, I drop it. I see it, I drop it. I see it, I drop it. And then like also like starting to like read people's energies a bit more and like being like, oh, this person, oh wow, you can like dance with them and like, oh, you can grow by yourself, you can dance with other people, you can do whatever. I tend to just dance alone. I think that's a bit of a metaphor for where I'm at the moment. It's just dancing alone, figuring things out. One person came and danced with me last week, and I was like, "Yeah, this is cool,"
mhm,
but I'm on my own journey. Um,
yeah. I like the you say the setup where like if you're the more you get like to your own core, like self accepting, the more your chances increase of finding somebody else who's also self-accepting, and that usually makes like for a better or more stable relationship.
Mm.
Uh, because like in my current relationship, I can see that like we're constantly catching each other, basically. So if I'm like overburdened in the day, she catches me, and if she's overburdened, I can catch her. And we've also had like sessions, like days when we were on trips where my energy was all gone, and then at some point her energy started waning, and then mine starts picking up again. And I
Mm.
think it's uh, like a nice and healthy balance. I've also had partners that weren't used to healthy relationships, and she goes like, "Why is your relationship so easy?" It's like, because I'm in balance. And then, there's not as much like I don't thrive on drama, and I've known people that do thrive on that. It's like, no, it's like,
Trap
um,
and drama.
oh
I
yeah,
like that.
and she tried for sure. I think at some
Yeah.
point she finally managed to get me angry. Like she got aroused. She's like, okay, I'm gonna be angry, and I was like angry for 5 minutes, and it's like, okay, I'm done. She's like, that's it. It's like, yeah. It's like I said what I wanted to say. Now it's out. Like I don't want to spend any more energy on being angry because that's so pointless.
Yeah.
And she was like, why? It's
Have
like,
you
yeah,
have you done meditation? Like, because a lot of the things that you say remind me of like meditative instructions that I've heard from like Sam Harris or whatever. Like, you know,
I didn't do. Well, I tried meditation, but I can't sit still that long. Like my mind
mm,
goes everywhere. So I prefer if there's like a little bit of movement. So I do more walking and thinking then.
mm,
And a large set comes probably from, I have it somewhere here, Wave the Superior Man, which has like a lot of
uh,
these higher,
David Data.
yeah, but you have to really read that one with a grain of salt, I always think, because he goes off on a tangent, but I like the thinking idea, like, to be in yourself, to understand emotions. And one of the things I got from that one that I gave my own spin and loved, is to accept the emotions of whoever you're with, um, as is. Like seeing your partner angry is a gift, just as well as seeing them cry, because you get to see the whole range of emotions. And it's like, just like winter or spring aren't necessarily better or worse, they're all different experiences. So if
Mm,
somebody gets mad at me, I used to feel feel that it, in my gut, I think, like, you get attacked, like you have to go on the defense.
mm,
And now it's more like jiu-jitsu, like, you feel it, it comes your direction, and it just flows through you. And then I go like, okay, it's not me. This person is like in an emotional state. It could be something I've done, but in that case, I shouldn't be doing that again, or it's
mm.
something I should be doing because I care about that. In that case, we're having like a different type of talk. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not as easy as as I'm saying, because I know that was a lot of work to get to that level where you can let go
Yeah.
of energy, push your
The two
direction.
things that stood out for me from that book is like that being able to hold the other
Yeah,
and be a witness, just to be a witness, not to try and fix, not to try and do anything. And on
yeah,
the like idea of like not trying to fix anything, like not trying, like things in life don't always resolve. Like there's
yeah,
no answer. Like there are paradoxes, and like, you have to like live with paradox. Um, yeah, and letting go of the certainty and the control, like has to operate in this way.
yeah. So those are elements where, like,
Mm.
accepting life as is, and knowing that not everything will work out. Have you seen the movie Bulletproof Monk?
No, this is good. I'm gonna write it
I
down.
like that one. It's of course, like, it's a semi company. It's pretty old by now, but he has like this philosophical question that he gets asked, and it goes like, what do um, hot dog buns come in packages of 8, and hot dogs cans come in packages of 9? That's the question that he gets
Why do hot
asked
dog
throughout.
buns come in
Come in packages
packages
of
of
8,
eight?
and hot dogs come in packages of 9. And he has to ask that question. He tries like the whole movie long, and in the end, he gets like the answer from the wise yogi that asked him that question. He goes like, "No, life sometimes doesn't work out. Cheer up, have a hot dog." It's like that
Wow.
phrase drove me like life sometimes doesn't work out. You can worry about it, and you can try finding all these solutions for it, but just cheer up and have a hot dog. Just accept. And I love that
Mm,
mentality, because it tells you, like, that's life. Living with the fact that it doesn't work out also makes our life interesting. Hard, but interesting.
Yeah, it's a good skill.
This
Yeah.
is a rough skill, man.
Yeah. I can just pause there. Bas,
Yeah.
thanks so much. If there's anything that you don't want included, just let me know. I mean, I'm happy to do the whole recording, conscious dancing, Tai Chi, yoga.
Yeah,
Like all good stuff,
have
man.
a look.
People need to.
See what works.
Yeah.
I'm some like after seeing the whole Tiago thing on X, I'm sometimes a bit worried, but then I'm also going like I'm much rather be upfront about who I am than that I get a group of people that don't understand who I am for real because they're following me, and then I have to explain that later, and I don't want to explain it because I don't have to explain it. That's who I am.
Mm.
Uh, But
Yeah.
that's and if somebody doesn't know, then they haven't been following my material. It's like because I
Interesting.
mentioned it off and on. So that'll be fine. You have like a great evening. I hope that you enjoyed the
I
dance.
didn't know, and I followed your stuff. So, anyways, I hope you enjoy the interview. If you are looking for more of Bas, his channel is called ToolsonTech, and he really is as awesome in real life as he is on the channel. To preempt some questions, will I be updating Logseq Mastery? Well, it remains to be seen just how big the database changes will be. So when I have played around with that for some time, when it's released in its full beta version, then I will inevitably need to make some updates. But for now, bar some minor tweaks, the course content is still 100% relevant. So if you want to get Logseq Mastery, have a look at the website. It's still available, and it is still very relevant to anyone who's trying to learn Logseq. I hope the discussion was helpful for you, and I hope to see you in the next video.